We've talked so much about the land in Louisiana. We've talked about where you find swamps here in the south, how you find hills and forests up here in the north, Mississippi River in the east, Lake Pontchartrain in the southeast. We've talked so much about the land. Now we're going to move on to start talking about the people of Louisiana. And we're going to start by going way back in history to talk about the very first people who settled in Louisiana. The very first settlers in Louisiana were the Native Americans, sometimes called the Indians. Now, where did the Native Americans come from? Well, the Native Americans came from the Northwest. They traveled over ice, following herds of animals that they could hunt for food, all the way down into the United States, into what is now Louisiana. The big question, though, is why did they settle in Louisiana? They're passing through, hunting herds of animals. Why did they stay here? And why did they settle? Well, the answer is simple. The natural resources. Remember that natural resources are things that are made by nature and used by humans. Well, Native Indians came to Louisiana for the natural resources. They had animals that they could use for food and fur. They had fresh water from the Mississippi River they could use to water their plants and drink. And they had plants that they could use to grow food and provide shelter for them. So it had all the natural resources they needed. Now, Louisiana's Native Indians looked a little different than other Native Indians you might have seen. So you might be used to seeing Native Americans in teepees riding on horses. But remember, in Louisiana, especially in South Louisiana, we have swamps. And swamps are no good for teepees and horses. So our question becomes, how did Louisiana's Native Indians survive the environment of Louisiana? Well, they did that by adapting. All right, to adapt means to change to better fit your environment. So they couldn't live like this because they were living here. So what did they do about it? They built chickees. All right, they lived in a home called a chickee, which is raised up off the ground. And it's also made of plant material. So it's made of the materials they have, and it's raised up off the ground so they don't have to worry about flooding from the swamps. Other ways that they adapted is by traveling in pirogues. All right. Pirogues are flat bottomed boats, so they're good for those shallow swamps. They're also made of wood, which there's plenty of wood there that they can build these pirogues out of. So they used the materials around them and made something that was useful for them in their environment. Now, your worksheet is going to ask, how would you adapt? The Native Americans came and settled in Louisiana and survived by adapting to fit their environment. You're going to read about different environments and you're going to have to pick how would you change to better fit into that environment so that you could survive. We're going to be talking about more settlers of Louisiana later, but for now you're going to be practicing learning about the Native Americans and how they adapted to live in Louisiana. All right, I'll see you next time. Enjoy.